Right now is Missouri Congressman, Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith. Mr. Chairman, always a pleasure. Thanks for being here.
It's great to see you, Maria.
So where are we on this? Kevin McCarthy says that the White House is not budging. The president continues to say he wants a clean debt ceiling release. He doesn't want any strings attached in terms of spending cuts or limitations. Do you have any update for us?
You know, Maria, the president and the Senate Democrats' extremist behavior in just not wanting to negotiate or even talk about the debt limit has been very, very reckless. What the president has been pushing and what Chuck Schumer has been pushing in a blank check clean debt limit can't even pass the United States Senate, Maria. If it could, Chuck Schumer would pass it, but even Democrat senators do not support that. So they need to come to the table. They need to not be reckless and hopefully make sure we don't have the same result what they did with Title 42 last night.
Well, obviously, we're looking at all these people swarming the border. But look, Biden is going to the G7 meeting next week at the end of the week, which is happening in Japan, as you know. So it's got to be earlier in the week. And I know that staffers are working on details. Is there any common ground? What about clawing back the COVID money, which was part of the House bill that passed? Did you get any sense that the White House would agree to that?
You know, where we are with staff negotiating right now is where we should have been in February when the president told Speaker McCarthy that they would sit down and continue discussions, which was a complete lie and did not happen. I believe that there's a pathway to get somewhere to the middle. The House passed a really solid bill, the Limit Save Grow Act, that cut $4.8 trillion. We laid out a laundry list of items to look at, to negotiate with. The president asked for our plan. The president said House Republicans couldn't deliver on increasing the debt limit. We delivered. The only party that has not delivered are the House Democrats, the Senate Democrats, and, of course, Joe Biden.
Meanwhile, we have a crisis underway in the banking sector, and you know that that is one of the reasons that the Federal Reserve is expecting that we're going to see a recession because of these small and regional banks that are watching deposits walk out the door. How worried are you, being the chairman of House Ways and Means, about the small businesses unable to get capital? We're seeing this credit tightening underway, as you know, and, you know, it's the small banks, the regional banks that lend to small business. 90% of small business gets the lending from these regional banks, and we're looking at collapses. Are you worried about this impacting things as well?
Absolutely, Maria. This is very alarming. And this affects small businesses. This affects farmers. This affects working class families. What we have seen because of this reckless, uncontrollable spending, in fact, $10 trillion of new spending under one-party Democrat rule over the last 2 years. I mean, they purchased things like ski resorts in Iowa or beach bathrooms in South Carolina. Such wasteful spending that led to the highest inflation in 40 years. In fact, inflation has gone up more than 15% since Joe Biden's taken the oath of office, which has led to the fastest increase of interest rates at 5.25% just in over a year. That's making it harder for every small business, every farmer, every working class family just to borrow money, and it is putting those regional banks in dire situations.
Well, you know, it's a good point because we're going to speak with Robert Kaplan in a few minutes, the former president of the Dallas Federal Reserve. And he told me that the Federal Reserve is being forced to continue raising interest rates because of the spending on the fiscal side. There's not an agreement in terms of taking down inflation when you've got the Federal Reserve, the only one in town, trying to raise interest rates to tame inflation, and the fiscal side of the House continuing to recklessly spend money. So he's going to join us in about 25 minutes to talk about the impact there. But in the face of all of that, Congressman, the White House is touting the economy, saying President Biden has had a great impact on the economy. Watch what happened yesterday. Watch this.
Unemployment is at its lowest level in more than 50 years. The share of working-age Americans in the workforce is the highest in 15 years. Our historic recovery and falling inflation is thanks to, in part, because of the president's work and what he's done over the last 2 years.
Congressman, Congressman, your thoughts? You just heard Karine Jean-Pierre saying the president has done everything to get us into this great employment situation.
I would encourage her, I would encourage the president to go to Real America and talk to real Americans. Go to Puxico, Missouri, in my congressional district, and they won't agree with that statement. They have seen inflation rise over 15%. They have seen that it costs more to put food on their table, clothes on their backs, and gasoline in their cars. And why has that happened? It's because of the reckless policies of the Democrats. Inflation was 1.4% in the month that Joe Biden took over office. But guess what? They decided a spending spree of $2 trillion for the American Rescue Package that fueled inflation, fueled the highest inflation in 40 years, and that is hurting every working class American. The president created an inflation crisis, a debt crisis, an energy crisis, and now we see a border crisis. I don't think that's the kind of leadership you want for this country.
Well, we do have a border crisis, and House Republicans did their work again on this, passing the border security bill yesterday. It cracks down on illegal immigration in the face of Title 42's expiration. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, however, sees everything differently. He says the crisis is over the past 20 years, not in the last 2 years. And, of course, he's blaming you, Congress, on this. Watch this.
Our current situation is the outcome of Congress leaving a broken, outdated immigration system in place for over 2 decades. It is also the result of Congress's decision not to provide us with the resources we need and that we requested.
Congressman, I have to point out that under Donald Trump, apprehensions at the border were at a 20-year low. We are now at a 40-year high. And yet Alejandro Mayorkas points the finger at the Congress.
Maria, we are where we're at today with a border crisis because just in President Biden's first 100 days in office, he did 94 different executive orders to weaken our immigration policies, to weaken our border security, reversing all of those great policies that worked underneath the Trump administration, which has now led to more than 5 million people who have illegally crossed the southern border. We have laws on the books. We just have Joe Biden and the administration not enforcing those laws. In fact, they're suspending good policies that have worked, which has led to this border crisis. We've seen over 80 individuals on the terrorist watch list cross the southern border just in the last 6 months. We've seen over 14,000 pounds of fentanyl that's been discovered at the southern border. That's enough to kill more than 3 billion people. It's a disgrace. This administration and their reckless policies are so disturbing.
Wow, it's very disturbing, Congressman. We're going to be watching it. Thanks very much for your time this morning. We so appreciate it.